Hello, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of Sunday Sit Down, the show where anything goes and nothing gets left behind. I am so excited today because I feel that this is going to be a true game-changing episode for this channel and YouTube in general, because we are going to be discussing an extremely important topic that I feel that we are not discussing enough. We may be yelling and we may be screaming about it, but that's not the way that this is all going to be handled. It needs to be taken care of in a rational manner. And especially considering the fact that it is Memorial Day weekend, where we embrace the memory of those who fought for this great country, and more importantly, embrace the freedoms and the liberties that we have, is what truly makes this country of America great. And now that I have triggered half of you guys in the audience, I'd like to welcome my panelist who is joining me today. She is actually the very first YouTuber that I actually met in person. As a matter of fact, she waved me down last year at BookCon on the lines. And she is someone who I've really developed a very strong friendship for, as well as sort of being a mentor to her in regards to shaping her YouTube career. She has really started to grow in terms of what kind of content she brings to her channel, as well as the discussions that she wants people to have. So I'd like to welcome Lauren from her channel, Random Reader. Lauren, good morning. I want to thank you for coming on to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about free speech. This is something I've always thought was so important, and I think it's definitely something that the community needs right now. I've noticed that we haven't always been going into free speech, or we silence others, and I think we need to really dive into the issue today and attack it head on.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we're only going to be toning this all down to just 1 hour, because believe me, everybody, Lauren and I could talk about this for days. It is unreal, the kinds of conversations that we've had in regards to a lot of this stuff. So as always, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And as always, I always like to start with my guests at the beginning. So the first question that I want to ask you, Lauren, is, when did you first decide to make politics and free speech a part of your daily discussion, whether it was on your YouTube channel or even with your peers and family?
Well, I think it just kind of started with history classes, but it really started getting crazy during debate season. Freshman year, I joined policy debate, and where we basically talk about policy that the United States should hypothetically do. So I started getting into politics and understanding all these different worldviews. And then I went on to YouTube and noticed that people were shutting them down, or whether you were from the left or the right, sometimes the left would shut down the right or vice versa. And we wouldn't be having these educated discussions. And so I found channels like, I don't know, I really like PragerU and Ben Shapiro. And I was able to look at all these different worldviews, and like just those two people really opening my eyes to some of the issues we have in society and politics that we can't engage in discussion. So that really sparked it for me once I was able to see broadening perspectives from debate, because you have to debate for or against a topic and it alternates. So you may not be talking about what you believe. And so that was something that really just made me realize the importance of intelligent free speech and discussion.
That's incredible. I'll give you a personal story here. I mean, me, always tried to steer from politics when I was growing up, because even before the world that we live in right now, it was definitely something that never seemed to sit well with anybody when they were trying to have a rational discussion. But I have to say that ever since the 2016 election, even before the election actually happened, that was when I started to really get involved and really start to understand what the political system was doing in terms of the overall satisfaction and well-being for the people of this nation. And it is quite crazy to see how much the country changed. I think we can even go back to 9/11, when a lot of attitudes and a lot of sides were starting to be taken. But these days, it has really turned into a colossal mess. And I feel that people really need to start understanding that there's nothing wrong with feeling about a certain issue different than somebody else, because even if you feel different, it doesn't mean that you're trying to harm anybody or really try to think negatively. It's just because sometimes you have to go into things and understand, how will this benefit me, or is this even my place? Because when people say you have to get involved because if you don't get involved, you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, I disagree with that. I really do. Because I don't want to fight in a fight that I don't know much about, that I don't really feel affects me as a citizen, as a human. I'd rather people who are truly in need of getting their voices out there and making a statement are the ones that really need to be fighting those important battles.
Hmm. I agree. I think it would just be ignorant of me to speak about something that I haven't really looked for, and that's why, like, on certain things, I guess you could say I'm centrist in certain things, but then right leaning on others. It just kind of depends the issue. But I always think research is critical, and that's just stems from debate, and that stems from like history class and learning all these different things. And I think that if we don't research before we form political opinions, I don't always think that's the best bet. And that's part of why I just don't always talk about politics on my channel per se, because A, I know it can be a very iffy topic. And the other, I just kind of want like a fun booktube environment, I guess. But I think opinions are very important. So I think sometimes I have to carry that political stem from free speech and carry it on to booktube, because we're not going to be able to keep YouTube alive if we aren't going to be able to spread our opinions effectively.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And that's perfect that you mentioned YouTube and BookTube, because that goes right into the second question that I had for you. And that was, when did you first discover that this topic was starting to be a very important thing that at least needed to be discussed a little bit more and maybe even try to find common ground with others? Did you have any hesitation into jumping into the conversation on YouTube?
Yes, I had lots of hesitation. One of my most, I think, my moment where I really thought we needed to have this discussion was when I created the discussion, what is it? Labeling books problematic. And that was a hot topic last year in the summer, and people would label books problematic, and and then some would others not see it as problematic. So there's kind of this bad connotation with the people who didn't see it, and they were calling these authors racist and misogynistic. And I can see how you can see different perspectives, but what I noticed is that art can sometimes be subjective. So if you don't see a situation the same, now there can be some harmful content, like if there's something abusive in a book and if it's not dealt with, I can definitely see different things. But then again, we have to also really look at all perspectives, and whether, whatever your race is, whatever your sexuality, we should be able to have diverse discussions of how we interpret the book, and not just shut down discussion because we're labeling something problematic. I think if you want to face the thing head on, you have to look at the other side and not just label a book problematic. Otherwise, you're not really going to be able to convince people, because there's just going to be shouting. So I realized that if others are able to express their feelings about a book being problematic, and then we can have a discussion if it is or isn't, I think that's a really cool thing, because literature is supposed to make you think, and we shouldn't be shutting that down.
Hmm. Absolutely agree with you there. Yeah, I definitely had a bit of a hesitation myself as well, but when a friend is in need, you have to assist your friend. So, of course, I'm going to bring up a name that is very much trigger happy in the booktube community. And that, of course, is my friend Brie Fauché when she did her diversity video. Now, a lot of people really didn't get the message. And quite frankly, I thought the video was a little all over the place and she could have explained it more clearer. But the main point that she was making was the fact that authors were being bullied because their character cast in their books just happened to be non-diverse and predominantly white. Now, there's nothing wrong because the skin color of your characters or the sexual orientations of your characters should never be the main focus of your book or your movie or whatever. What's the main focus that really needs to be touched on is the story and how it's written, how the dialogue is exchanged between characters. Because if someone is just going to get up on their proverbial soapbox and say, hey, come watch my movie or come read my book, look at this rainbow of colors I have in my book or my movie, but then the thing just turns out to be pure, unadulterated, pointless crap, that's just not going to win your true viewership or your readership like you would like it. I mean, there may be some people that will neglect it and not care because it's diverse. But I feel that that's just not the way to go into any form of entertainment. There has to be substance. Everything else is just secondary. So when I saw that she was being attacked because this was the message that she was sending, that was when I started to get more involved. And I basically went on the front lines to try and give some logic to people. And if there's one thing I know about these extremists, whether they're extreme on the left or extreme on the right, logic is not in their repertoire. They don't understand it. When you hit someone like that with logic, they just don't know what to do with themselves because, one, they don't want to admit that they're most likely wrong, and two, they don't know how to fight back against logic. Logic is the most powerful tool that anyone that is trying to engage someone in rational conversation, there needs to be more of that.
I agree. And I could definitely see how people could read Bree's video negatively, but then when I really dug into the message and understood that she was just trying to say that diversity, could be a good thing to add, but she cares more about the story. I definitely like the core message, and I may not have necessarily always enjoyed the delivery, but I think the core message is something important. I like when I read a diverse book. I think if a book is able to have diversity and an amazing story, that's so important. But if a book has an amazing story and doesn't have diversity, I don't want to say I'm going to count something against it or label it racist. I mean, I definitely think diversity is important, but if we would more have a focus on a good story and diversity coming hand in hand into that conversation, I think that's really the critical thing that we need to be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me personally, when I read a book, I actually appreciate it when there's no physical description of the characters. You get to use your own imagination. You could be as single color or single sexual orientation or as diverse as you want to be. I really appreciate when people leave a lot of this up to the imagination. I mean, one of the few things that I saw very recently was the HBO film of Fahrenheit 451. And one of the things that I remember for certain was the main character in the book, Guy Montag. They don't mention his orientation or his skin color. So when they found out that Michael B. Jordan was cast as Guy Montag in the HBO film, I was like, oh, cool. Michael B. Jordan. I like this guy. He's a great actor. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. When you leave it up to the imagination, the sky is the limit. And that's just how I felt about that.
Yeah. I definitely like it, or especially when you're able to imagine different things or imagine in a different world. I know lots of people were angry about Harry Potter and how Dumbledore wasn't explicitly said to be gay. But the thing is, I don't think that was necessarily the point of the story. In Harry Potter, it's not a point that Dumbledore is gay. And so I didn't think that was something that you necessarily need to focus on. I know for some, representation is super important, and I don't want to tell people it's not because that's not my place. But I also think that if I'm in a story and if some representation may seem to be not included or as developed, I don't find it as important. If you're going to include sexuality, I mean, sometimes, yes, you want that representation, but if you're going to write it as well as you would a straight romance if you are straight. That's just kind of my outward on that. I really want the merit of the story and the quality to be up to par, and I have to make sure that the authors are thinking of that well, not just being afraid and throwing in diversity for the sake of it.
Yeah, because if they do that, that's when diversity can turn into tokenism, and tokenism really takes those topics and puts them in a bad light, because when they do something like that, most of the time, if not all the time, they may add those kinds of characters, but they won't give any substance or a background or a true story to those characters. And that's something that can make people even more angry. But that's the reason why we need to let people understand that, you know, you can yell and scream about making sure that these kinds of portrayals are in your stories, but if you're only just going to say, I'm going to be happy just because there's someone that looks like me or sounds like me, but not given any character development, I mean, to me, that's insulting, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Like, if you're gonna write a character, develop it, and that's where I think it's like we can't just start saying that writing quality is going to diminish. We have to look at it as diversity. Make sure if you're going to write that diverse character, you know, do the research, make sure you really want it in the story, or if you're just adding it for the sake to make people happy. And if you're able to really develop, you're A, not going to insult people, B, you're going to have a great character, and C, a great story. And I think that's what's here with BookTube. We essentially want the highest quality of writing we can and promote that. And so if we go down a dangerous path, I think we could lose that. So if we promote diversity and quality hand in hand, we're going to be keeping good literature.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I can't agree with you more. So now let's move on to the third question, and I think you're going to really enjoy this one. So, you are on your school's debate team. And I also have to admit that I am just so impressed to see somebody who is not even old enough to vote yet, so invested in the well being of this country, whether it is the social, political, or economic well being. So, being on your school's debate team, when did you decide to join the team? Was it before or after you saw this shift and further further separation of the right and the left?
Well, I don't even know if it's like even comes down to being something as complicated as that. I just remember in 8th grade, my teacher said, "Hey, you might like this activity." And my mom had told me, "Oh yeah, you're not going to be good at that. You know, you freak out, you're nervous. This is not something you're going to like." And so I kind of spite joined it actually. And once I joined debate, I really realized the political climate we were in, and it made me even more passionate about it, being able to discuss. And so at first, it may have just been a spite thing where I was kind of interested because I'm nerdy and I love research. And then it became something where I could really have this outlet to speak and not only improve my, you know, speaking skills, but critical thinking, problem solving. And if you don't know, in policy debate, people speak very fast in your speeches. Like it's not normal reading. You're reading pretty rapid fire. I know in my state, we try to tone that down a little so we focus more on communication. But if you look up a video of policy debate, it is crazy and you have to be writing super fast and taking notes. You can't drop an argument. And so that level of excitement and then mixing that with discussion was kind of the perfect outlet for me.
That's fantastic. I mean, I never in my wildest dreams thought that I could ever be on something like debate because, you know, while I thanks to YouTube, I feel that I've actually developed some really good speaking skills, especially when it comes to addressing a virtual audience. But a lot of people have actually said to me that when I actually have to get up and make a speech, I do speak very, very well. But that's great. But I just don't feel that me personally debating in a serious forum, because you also have to keep yourself restricted. Like, you can't curse at somebody. You can't like be extremely, because like I loved a couple of months ago when you posted on your Twitter that you brought the sass to one of your debates to the point where one of the teachers actually said, "Don't be so mean." Like, I thought that that was fantastic. But that's what it's about when it comes to having passion. You know, when you have passion about something that you truly believe in, you're going to sound very rash. You're going to sound very violent. You may be up against someone that is going to want to cower in a corner in the fetal position after you've said your piece. But that's what it's all about, because when you bring that fire to something that you believe in, I think what it also does is it brings out the true side in the person, and it makes you feel, at least to the people that are watching you say what you're saying, it makes them feel that this person is being as real as he or she can possibly be, you know?
Hmm. And with debate being so evidence-based, like I really try to bring the fire. I will be researching for hours. Like there's this one team that really just like I didn't have a good reason for like disliking this one kid other than I had watched a round that this kid was in, and his case just really annoyed me. Like, because for debate, you have a case, which is basically your idea that you're proposing. So for this year, it was education policy. So you either have funding or reform education. So it was restorative justice, which in turn would seem like a good thing, but it's more the structure of his case really made me mad. So I flowed around and I took notes and then I went home and for hours researched. Eventually, at a tournament, I turned out to go against them and I was like, oh, I know your case. But in my head, I was like, you can't act like you know. And so I'd eventually debate him and I just came out with the fire and the evidence. And I don't think he was too pleased. And I think we eventually became friends because of my sass. And then I tried to always stay nice now this year, because freshman year I was just sassy. And this year I've really been able to tone it down and realize just let the evidence speak for itself. But if you're able to give the passion into what you're saying, but also be able to have an intelligent discussion, I think that's just the best thing ever.
Yeah, and more importantly, it's a learning experience. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
when you first take on topics, especially when it comes to some of these heavy hitters, it's like when you first hear about it, you know, you start feeling all these different kinds of emotions and you just want to attack them head on. But then we got to take a step back and remember what Ben Shapiro says: facts don't care about your feelings. So you got to research and you got to come at these people with those facts. You got to take a look at their talking points, and then you got to take a look at those specific talking points and what other points of view are. And through that, you grow as a debater. You grow in regards to the passions and the areas that you hold to yourself. And through that, you learn to be more formal. You learn to be more rational. You learn the common topic of two ears and one mouth. And that's also very important. But let's move on to the fourth question, because we've already tackled a little bit about diversity, but the next question that I want to ask you is, do you feel that these talking points, such as diversity and gun control and illegal immigration and immigration reform, especially when it comes to speaking your mind and allowing yourself to use your values of free speech, do you feel that these kinds of topics should be a driving force in the YouTube community, or should we really go back to what YouTube was really about, and that was focusing on the entertainment?
Okay, this one is kind of like this is a really interesting question because I think if you want to make politics something on your channel, then by all means go do it. But if it's something that you're going to do half-heartedly, like, and you don't really want to spread the message that you're like coming across, or if you're just doing it to please your audience, like, I don't really advocate for that. I do like parts of old YouTube focusing on entertainment, but then again, I like some political videos, like again, Ben Shapiro and being able to see his discussions. And I've even like popped onto a few more liberal channels, like Lacey Green is I think pretty far on the left, I'd say. And I've watched a few of her videos. And so I like the discussions it sparks, but I also think it's made the community more hostile at times and more versus. And I think that's part of the people that are advocating, I guess, and talking. Because there are some people who are very hostile when they talk about politics. Like if you disagree, you are seen as a terrible person or someone who should be kicked to the curb. And that's a big problem I have. I think if you're going to talk about a message and if someone disagrees with you, don't get angry about it. You're going to change their mind easier if you are cordial, if you're nice and respectful. And that would be making the political community on YouTube a lot better. So I definitely like it, but I also think there's some merit in entertainment. So I don't know what I would like better. I think it's more society is changing. So YouTube is changing a little with it.
Yeah, I agree there. One of the things that a lot of people say, whether it's on YouTube or even when it's on news broadcasts, a lot of people are now saying this big line, and that is that politics is a trickle down from entertainment. And I, to a certain degree, get a little bit upset over the fact that politics are being treated like entertainment. I don't really feel that that's the right thing to do, because I do feel that if you want to bring these two worlds together, you've just got to find the appropriate way to do it. It's like when I realized that all of this stuff was happening, I did feel that I wanted to express some of my views. Like just recently, and it'll go up in a couple of days, I went to go see Solo: A Star Wars Story, this Star Wars movie that is in tremendous controversy. And one of the things that a lot of people were talking about was the fact that Lucasfilm made the announcement that Lando Calrissian was pansexual. And I'm like, wonderful. Congratulations. But I didn't appreciate the fact that they did that, because that's not why we're going to go see this movie if we want to. Nobody cares about the fact that Lando Calrissian is pansexual. So why do you have to get up on your soapbox? Because if people would have just went to see the movie and they saw this, they were saying, oh, great, he's pansexual. Let's move on to the next part of the story. Because that's one of the things I don't appreciate. I don't appreciate virtue signaling to appeal to crowds, because basically they're saying, come see our movie because our character is pansexual. That's not why people want to see this movie. People want to see Solo: A Star Wars Story. They want to see the story. Everything else will come into place, and everything else will have its time and will have its day in the sun. And if you just shut up and let people just watch the movie, as long as it's a good movie, no one is going to be offended and no one is going to have anything negative to say. Because I love that I get attacked for the fact that I say certain things about my attitude towards diversity, and and people say to me, well, why is this not supposed to be? Why do you not like the fact that there's a black character or a Hispanic character? Are you a racist? So on and so forth. I'm like, I love Black Panther. Black Panther is a predominantly black cast because it's a good movie. And one of the other things that I say is, when someone puts a negative comment on a YouTube video because they didn't like my attitude towards the certain film, if someone's going to say, your video sucks, you don't know anything, you don't know what good movies are, there's such an opening there to really express your free speech and say a couple things. Because when someone makes a comment like that, I just say, tell me why you feel that way. What is it about my attitude towards this movie that sucks? Almost 90% of the time, no one is going to be able to answer that question. And that says a lot about their character. And that's what it's all about. You've got to let people say what they want to say. And if it's something that doesn't make you happy, first of all, if it doesn't make you happy, big deal. But if it's something that you don't agree with, I want to know why you don't agree with me. If you're just going to say, because I just disagree with you, then there's no argument here.
I agree with that. I think I didn't even know that there's a pansexual character in Han Solo, and to me, it's like, yeah, that's great, but I'd hope they end up developing him rather than just be a virtue signal. Because if they're able to actually develop him and make that like a good part of his character and add for development, I'm all for it. But I just really hope they don't underdevelop that aspect, because otherwise, it's like, why'd you add it in if you're not developing it? That, like I'd said earlier. But I think with the movie industry, there is lots of politics kind of trickling in, and I don't have problem if it's just like representation, because I don't even know if I'd say it's like politics, or what I would categorize that. It's like, hey, it's cool if you have a gay character, or a bisexual character, or a black character, or a Hispanic character, like, because our world is obviously very diverse. But I think, again, when we almost focus on that before the story in the media, I think that's really doing a disservice to what we're trying to accomplish, which is at the end of the day, good stories.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really needs to be done is if you don't push your values down somebody else's throat, rather you just show it to people and explain why you feel this way, that's what's going to really open up the rational conversation. And more importantly, that's what's going to lead to the acceptance of your message. I mean, why was Love, Simon such a successful film to a large portion of this country? It didn't make the money that people were going to think that it was going to make, but it's not because of the fact that it focused on a guy that was afraid of coming out. It's just because of the fact that not everybody wants to go see a teen comedy. Not everybody wants to go see these kinds of stories. It's like the same reason why I don't read contemporary fiction. And it's not that I don't like it, it's just not something that I'm interested in. People have the right to not be interested in anything or everything. I know so many people that are not interested in science fiction and fantasy. I have fellow people in the booktube community who won't even pick up a YA book because it's just not something that they're interested in. What is wrong with that?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that or not finding interest in a book. I don't think we should police other people with the media they consume because we like to say, yeah, you can read what you want and you can read these different books. And if someone doesn't want to read the mainstream book, they don't have to. It shouldn't come down to you trying to be the gatekeeper of all entertainment. I think that's just silly and immature for people to try to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to take a break from the discussion because we have reached the half-hour mark. It's very quiet in the chat today. I'm not surprised because it is a holiday weekend, but just in case you are watching, I just want to let everybody know that this video is going to be taken down in about a couple of hours after we officially go off the air, and then I'm going to edit it. I'm going to post it back on Monday afternoon. Normally it goes up at 7 a.m. on Monday, but there's a little bit of an exception this week because of the fact that I do have another video coming out at 7 a.m. So this one will most likely show up at around noon on my channel. So getting back to the questions, we have 3 more left. We're making great time, which is wonderful, and I'm loving the conversation to a great extent. As someone like myself who holds conservative values, you clearly show that you have an open mind and you're willing to extend your hand across the aisle. What has your experience been when you tried to do that?
For the most part, it's fairly positive. Like, if I'm trying to see a different point of view, it's mostly good, and I'm just blessed with where I live to have people who are overall pretty accepting in my school to, either Republicans or liberals. We're able to talk about lots of issues and the nuances of things, mostly because my teachers really try to promote that. I know my history teacher, we disagree on some things politically, but he's been able to have conversations with me in class. Some of the most important conversations are some kids would kind of laugh because he would say something I'd be, but what about this fact? And he'd be like, oh, I'd never thought about that. And then he'd throw something my way. And it was overall very healthy. I think sometimes on the internet, it's harder to do that. I've had conversations on the internet that just don't end up working out to be as productive. But overall, I've had pretty good experiences with that.
That's wonderful. You're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially when I started getting involved in the political world. I mean, I think one of the most interesting things was thanks to BookTube. When I started hearing about all this, my eyes really started getting open, and we're talking about someone who was a centrist liberal. I mean, I did vote for President Obama. I mostly voted Democrat when I actually had the ability to vote. And I will not deny the fact that when the economy tanked in 2008, I didn't want a Republican back in the White House because I really felt that they screwed up the country. That was just how I felt. But when I saw what was happening and how this country took such a cultural shift, it was going against a lot of things that I held dear free speech was one of them. I mean, I think that one of the stupidest arguments that people are having these days is that hate speech is not free speech. Bill Maher, who is a very well-known liberal, said it best on his show that hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. It is threats that are not. But the fact that some people will say that hate speech leads to violence, honestly, that is true to a very small consent. It is not entirely true. Because when you were a kid and someone walked up to you and said, "I hate you," there's a very good chance that that kid did not punch you in the face right after. Maybe he or she did, because that has been known to happen. But almost all the time, chances are that didn't happen. So I started doing some research, and that was when I realized that it was the conservative end that was really something that I started to agree with more in terms of protecting my rights as an American citizen. And then I really lost faith in the left side because I found out that so many of these people were leaning towards socialism. And as a country that has been fighting against socialism and communism for so many years, the fact that we are now developing a culture where young people want that for our country, I mean, unless they spend a week in Venezuela, they have no idea what they're talking about. Just a perfect example there. But
Yeah, 'cause I'm like, oh, sorry.
no, please. You have a thought. I want you to express it, please.
See, like when people talk about socialism, and like, no offense to if anyone's watching who is socialist, but like I look at this, I'm sitting here like there's so many examples of communist and social nations that economically are in very bad places. So why would we want to put America in that place? Like to me, it does not make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's because of the fact that they are instituting, especially in schools and college campuses, they're expressing that everybody is a victim and nobody should work hard to get what they want. And I feel that when you are under a capitalist society, that's where you truly embrace yourself and you don't go towards the groupthink mentality and the robot mentality. As far as I remember being a kid growing up in school, all of my teachers always said, be a leader. Don't be a follower. Be your own person. And that is the strongest message that anybody can receive. And in a socialist society, you don't feel that way. I mean, if you take a look at the economic structure of anything that is communist or socialist, everybody gets the same paycheck to a certain degree in strong communist nations. So basically, what you're saying to me is if we had a communist nation, the person who is a doctor who is preventing a doctor that is curing cancer gets the exact same paycheck as a cashier at Target. Why would anyone want to become a doctor who saves people's lives? Or
Mhm.
and I feel that when you have a sense of capitalism to strive to be the best person that you can be, to make the kind of money that you want, I feel that that gives you a little bit of a fight, a reason for living. Someone who doesn't have the chance to grow is basically laziness, because I've always said to myself when I wanted to go for a job, what's the growth potential? If I'm just going to be stuck in one rung on the ladder for the rest of my career, why would I want to work at a place like this? I'd rather move on to a place where there's growth, because I want to grow. I want to be better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think because capitalism is very focused on hard work, and I feel like socialism, again, I would have no motivation because of the fact that my hard work wouldn't always pay off or get me ahead. Like, I just think hard work is such an important value, and if we start having that deteriorate, you're going to have people just going around that have no idea what they want to do with their lives, and you're going to have less happiness.
Yeah, I also think that what really also needs to be done, and I mean, I really hope that President Trump's message of draining the swamp, I really hope it happens, because I feel that people would embrace capitalism more if the true criminals who abuse the system actually get thrown in jail. I mean, if there's anything where things really need to be equal, I believe it's the justice system. I don't believe that a Black or a Hispanic kid should get severe jail time for possession of marijuana than someone who is a convicted serial killer. And I don't believe that a true corrupt CEO of a business that screwed people out of their money should be subjected to just probation. Those people need to be thrown in jail and they need to do the time. And that is why there was so much distrust in the government, especially after big names like Enron and Quest went suffered major economic losses and the crash of 2008, because the criminals that put these companies into these positions and the lives that they destroyed didn't get thrown into jail and didn't do the time. That was where the anger was. And that's what I feel really needs to change. If we can really crack down on white collar crime with severity, I feel that capitalism would be embraced by everybody.
I completely agree. Like, I mean, you basically summed up all my thoughts on the justice system. But the thing that bothers me is that, sometimes men get harsher sentences for women than the same thing, and certain races get harsher sentences for like certain things, and it just happens to turn out that way. And I just scratch my head wondering, but it's the exact same crime, almost the exact same scenario. Why are we giving someone more years in jail than the other? Like, it just doesn't make sense at all. But overall, I think capitalism is a good thing, but that's one of the few things I agree that if that was fixed, people would definitely embrace it.
Yeah. But unfortunately, rational and trustworthy people like ourselves are people that the lobbyists and the corrupt people don't want us to be there. It's like one of my old acquaintances once said, because he was such an honest and trustworthy guy, people always said that he would be such an amazing president, but he would fire right back and say, I would get assassinated on my second day because nobody would want a true and just and honorable leader in the White House, And that's a sad thing to actually say. But now I want to touch on the next question. And I think that this is a very personal thing for the both of us. We both have actually been attacked in regards to the ways that we feel and the ways that we think and how we express ourselves on certain issues. And I know this because of the fact that the two of us actually had a great conversation or few when all of this was actually happening. Even though the fires were extinguished to a certain degree, is it something that you still think about? And is it something that if you had the ability to go back and change it, would you change it?
Oh, this is a great question. Yeah, I'd probably go back and change it. I don't know. Or okay. I have to think about that for a bit because I go back and I do think about like it a lot. I'm someone who's just a very anxious person, so thinking about that, like I would just get stressed out and I would think about, what if I'm a terrible person? What if all this? What if all this? And then I realized that free speech is important, and the person who was able to make me see a little differently, because like I didn't completely change my mind on the issue, but I was able to see a different perspective and maybe see it in a different light, and so become, I guess, more centrist on it. If that, I don't know, like it was centrist, slightly right leaning. Like I can't categorize it very well, but like what they'd said, the one who was able to change my mind was the kind one, but I would have taken it back to explain it a bit differently because I feel like on the internet things can get twisted when you just like comment or you write it, it can easily get twisted and misconstrued and then go just crazy. So I wish I could have explained it a little more in depth because I think certain things can be taken out of context. I think that's in a way what happened, but I do think that's what I would change. But at the same time, it's made me grow and learn, so I'm not going to be against it. But how do you feel about your situation?
Well, I think that one of the things that I'm upset about is the fact that the person that I had this really big falling out with is someone that I will never speak to again because I don't want to speak to this person again. And to a certain extent, it's my fault because all I did was I expressed an opinion, but this person was so far in the other direction. I don't really think that we would ever truly be able to make amends. And it's sad because I thought that this person was a very truly good person. And that's basically my overall feeling there. But I feel that due to circumstances, especially in the world that we're living in right now, people are going to turn into something that you may perceive as a monster while some other people will not. I mean, I also just recently watched a video of a YouTuber who tried to express feelings towards a certain topic, and because the words didn't come out right, well, I think another one of the major issues is the fact that nobody listens anymore. When someone immediately hears an
Mhm.
opposing view, they just don't care. The ears, they put the earplugs in the ear and they put the pillow over their head and they go la 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 la. I don't care anymore. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. I don't care. But that's a problem, because when Donald Trump won the election, the first thing that I did was I watched my Twitter feed and I watched all of my followers who were upset and who were angry and who were just basically spewing rhetoric all over the Twitterverse. The first thing that I did was I DM'd some of those people and I wanted to talk to them. I want to know why they feel this way.
Mhm.
And as someone who changed my own personal views and went to the right, even though, and I have said this so many times in past videos, I didn't vote in the last election. And it's only because of the fact that I didn't trust either of the candidates, and I will not vote for someone I do not trust. That's just a fact of life. I don't. They say that you know that you have the right to vote. Yes, you do have the right to vote, but you also are able to not use your right if you don't want to. That's why we live in this country. We are free to make our own decisions and be who we want to be. It is not a law. It is a privilege. It is a gift to vote. So I just didn't want to vote for somebody that I didn't like. But I was happy with the outcome because the promises were things that I really believed would fix this country. I don't necessarily want to say the social things. I want to focus more on the economic things because that was my concern. I wanted jobs for the country. I wanted businesses to come back to the country. I wanted people to start investing in the country again. So that was my major concern. And lo and behold, it's happening. People are
Mhm.
making more money. People are taking home bigger paychecks now because of the tax plan. Our wonderful minority speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, says they're crumbs. Well, you know something? Are you someone who is living in a state like South Dakota or Wyoming? Those crumbs are a feast for these people. And it's a blessing that they're receiving this. And now they want to bring more into the tax reform to try and make these tax cuts permanent. And because of how well the economy started to do, I saw this firsthand in my own place of work. We did very well in terms of tuition. We got past budget, so they increased our paychecks for the cost of living. So we got a small bump. And then the tax plan took effect. We got another bump. And that's something that everybody was happy about. I actually am going to be saving money on healthcare costs this year. That is incredible. So the fact that all of these amazing things are happening, I'm saying to myself, the people are going to take notice and are going to embrace these specific things. Maybe not necessarily other things, but these things are truly what matter to the average working class person in this country. And they're going to be voting in the next election with their pocketbook. That's what's going to happen because that's how it always happens. But I wish that there could be more rational people on the other side. But one of the few things I'm happy about is the fact that some people who I have talked to and have expressed my opinions towards, I think one of the most interesting things is some of the things that I mentioned to them were things that they didn't even know. And I provided them with proof to look at these ideas, and they've come back to me with, they're still holding strong to their views, but the most important thing is they see where I'm coming from. And that's the purpose of free speech. Because if we don't
Mhm.
know what the other person is thinking, we're never going to be able to function with one another. We're never, ever going to truly love our neighbors anymore. And that's the most important thing that needs to be sent across the world in terms of messaging.
See, it's funny you bring that up because like one of my best friends is very on the left, but like okay, she's like my best friend, you know, we have so much in common, but politics we sometimes disagree on, and we have never had one major fight because of politics. And we're two very passionate people. And that's what I think is so important about free speech. If you're able to be intelligent, if you're able to explain your side, if you're able to stay rational, you're going to have more people working together because we all have a lot more common than we like to think. Like a conservative and a liberal, I guarantee you there's one thing that they will have in common at some point, whether people will like to admit it or not. So finding those little commonalities to work with, I think, is going to create a lot smarter of generation and of people that are going to accept free speech and really welcome it with open arms. And I really hope that we can get back on track to doing so.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear stories of relationships and families breaking down all because they disagreed with politics, I'm like, how could you do that to yourself when you all have so much else in common with each other? You know, like I have friends who don't agree with me politically, but we share so much in common with everything else. We like the same books, we like the same music, we like the same movies, we like the same sports teams. There's so much to like. Why throw it away on something so puny? It's important, don't get me wrong, but if that's the one thing that you do not share common ground with, and that ends up being your tipping point to ruining a lifelong friendship or a lifelong relationship, I think it's sad.
Me too. Because, like, some people will bring up the example, oh, what if they're racist or homophobic? I'm like, that's a whole nother train to talk about. Like, I'm not talking about just a small differing of views. Like, if someone is outright racist and homophobic and, like, terrible, I get that, I guess, with that relationship. But, like, for just the differing of views, that's the one I want to make sure clear just to those watching. Because sometimes people like to say, what if those? So I just want to get those off the table to make my message more clear. But if we're able to just look at a small differing of views and to be able to like talk to family members or agree to disagree, I think that will just make family stronger and it will really bring back family values and friendship values. Because just saying, oh, I need to be in my one specific group to where I think just the same as others, I think that's just putting you in an echo chamber and you're not going to grow at all from that.
Hey, look, I was almost always the black sheep in my family. And when I was the only liberal in a house of conservatives, oh, they didn't toss me out on the curb. They thought that I frickin' lost my mind, but they weren't going to disown me. But anyway, since we're getting into the last 10 minutes, I want to go to the last question, then we'll wrap things up. So we've basically seen the worst case scenarios in these specific areas that have affected YouTube, especially on the basis of the new rules that they've recently instituted where a lot of conservative speech is getting silenced. That's a major factor as to why free speech is such a hot button topic here in this community. So based on everything that has happened, how do you feel, especially with the outcry of a lot of people saying that this is wrong? What do you think the future holds for YouTube as a community, especially when it comes to free expression and free speech? Do you think that we'll ever get out of this funk? Do you think that we'll ever actually find common ground?
That's a difficult question. I'm not for sure if we'll find common ground soon. I do hope at one point. One thing I've noticed is that more and more people are starting to discuss a little bit more. Like, I've noticed there are definitely bad things that happen in the community, and lots of free speech is silenced. But at the same time, there are a few people coming out and saying, hey, free speech is good. Hey, free speech is important. Like Kanye West, I hate to use him as like my
I think
spokesperson.
most of us do.
Yeah, but like as an example, you know, for him to say free speech is important and it's valuable, I think these little things of not, I don't like to say little acts of rebellion, I'm trying to find the word, but like little acts of just going against the grain and showing that, hey, this is a good thing to talk about. I think slowly we're going to start seeing a bit more free speech, especially in the state of our country. I think people are going to get sick and realize that a world without free speech is a world without intelligence. And with a world without intelligence, you're not going to be able to truly progress like progressive, like the very far left wants to progress. So we're not going to get that. And so lots of the conservatives speaking out about it, I think is going to make the world a better place. But also when Lacey Green was even able to say she was like slightly red pilled, I think that really opened up a lot too. So I'm hoping that the channels are going to go that direction, because the more we talk about this stuff, I think the more it's going to spread.
And I mean, Lacey is even dating a fellow YouTuber who is extremely conservative. Chris Raygun is a very conservative speaker on YouTube. He's fantastic. And the fact that they have two opposing sides that are actually a couple, I mean, honestly, I have no idea if they're still together, but last I heard they were. And the worst part was that Lacey Green's extreme liberal followers basically blasted her for actually dating a conservative mind. And I think that that's absolutely terrible. But I personally feel that I think what a major turning point couldn't possibly be is going to be the midterm elections, especially in this country, because at one point in time, especially after the beginning of 2018, the Democrats had a stronghold of flipping the Senate and flipping the House. I think they had like a 14 percentage point differential, and now it's down to, I believe, somewhere between 3 and 1. And it's due to the fact that they are not really trying to express what they want to do for the country. The only thing that they're saying is, if we get the House, if we get the Senate, we're going to impeach Trump, we're going to roll back the taxes, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. Basically, what he is doing with all of Obama's policies is what they want to do with Trump's policies. And the real question is going to be, especially from an economic standpoint, do people really want to lose what they've been given in terms of additional cash? And I feel that if the Republicans do in fact keep the House and do keep the Senate, that is where I feel that the average Democrat or left-leaning person is going to stop and think a bit and say, being progressive is good, but it's not about changing everything and making something new. It's about remembering what we have done to get to this point. And I feel that that is the only way that we're truly going to be able to progress in this country and live as a true functioning society. That's the only thing that I think is going to do that. I do feel that YouTube is going to unite, especially considering the fact that there's so many voices out there from both sides that are expressing the attitudes positively towards free speech and positively towards additional opinions, saying, let's talk with other people, let's not fight, let's find out why people think a certain way. And the fact that there's so many YouTubers out there that are starting to post those kinds of videos, I just hope that people like you and me will spark more people to make more insightful, not hostile videos about these topics, so more people can start learning more about it and start thinking for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is going to be the only way to make the YouTube community, a good, wholesome place to be able to discuss and pair our entertainment. But if you want politics, allowing for free speech, because we like to say that free speech is just in politics, but like I mentioned earlier, this can be in books. Some people are so afraid to express an opinion, and I think it's so important to be able to really have open arms to every point of view and rate reviews, positive reviews, in the middle, reviews in between. I think that's going to make every community stronger to be able to just talk freely.
Amen to that. Well, anyway, we are actually wrapping everything up. We're actually heading into the last minute. So I just want to say, all of you who actually did stop by to watch, thank you so much. Once again, this video will be taken down in a couple of hours, and then it will be edited and put back up onto my channel tomorrow, which is the 28th of May at around noon. But Lauren, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on to the show today. This was an absolutely wonderful conversation. I'm hoping that you and I could do some more projects to really try and get more of these kinds of messages out, because I really feel at this point in time that the conversation is far from over.
I agree. That'd be very fun. And I really appreciate you having me on your channel to talk about this. It was such a great experience. And I'm glad we were able to, get it done and planned and be able to do this live show. And I hope you all really enjoyed.
Yeah, me too. Well, anyway, thank you always for watching, everybody. I am once again Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. All of Lauren's information, if you want to check out her channel, will be in the box below. So I'm hoping that you all enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend and that you will join me next time for the next episode of Sunday Sit Down. I am Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome, and I'm looking forward to another great topic, but more importantly, another great YouTuber to discuss it with. So I will see you in the next one. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.